everyone! Today's video is all about salacious rumors, sultry scandals, secret pregnancies, and savage betrayals. It's the top 10 scandalous historical events from the Tudor England. So, we're gonna start with a classic, naturally, a very public affair. In 510, when Catherine of Aragon was expecting their second child, Henry VIII strayed from his marriage for the first time. This was a time era when it was believed intercourse during pregnancy would affect the baby. Seeing as his heir was riding kangaroo style all up in his wife, and Henry had manly needs he evidently just couldn't contain, he found himself in bed with Anne, aka Lady Hastings. He kept his affair with Anne a secret until her own sister, Lady Fitzwalter, wishing to spare their family a scandal, told their brother, the Duke of Buckingham. Buckingham naturally berated Anne, and her right husband carried her off to a nunnery. The king then showed great displeasure and banished the Lady Fitzwalter from the court. Why? Henry was convinced she had set women to spy on him in order to tell the queen of his adultery. But Henry comes to find out that the Queen Catherine already knew. She didn't need spies, and boy was she pissed. The result was a very public blowout between the couple. Yet it was a wife's duty to maintain a dignified silence in the face of infidelity, and in the end, Catherine conceded defeat and sucked up the fact she married a loser. And while Catherine never provided a male heir, someone did. Let's meet the illegitimate son. Henry had a tendency to marry women that just couldn't provide a son no matter how long he pined for a legitimate male heir. But it did not take long for him to have an illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy. His mother was an attractive girl about the court named Bessie Blount. Surprisingly, the king acknowledged the crap out of this illegitimate heir. On the 18th of June 1525, in a ceremony in London's Grand Bridewell Palace, then 6 years old, Henry Fitzroy was made the Earl of Nottingham and the Duke of both Richmond and Somerset. The right high noble prince, as the youngster was now styled, had become the highest ranking member of English nobility. Henry loved him like his own soul, the Venetian ambassador reported, and as the king himself put it, Fitzroy was my worldly jewel. Historian contemporaries fully believe Fitzroy was being groomed for the throne before his premature death from consumption. There's a decent amount of evidence to uphold this notion, such as the meeting of the Privy Council of June 1536. The Earl of Sussex declared that Fitzroy would make a better choice of a monarch than Mary, as Mary and Elizabeth were both illegitimates as well. As the princess was a bastard as well as the Duke of Richmond, it would be right to prefer the male to the female, the Earl had said, and Henry agreed. One of the most emotive and spectacular paintings to come out of the French Salon depicts the death of the 9-day queen. So, the third scandal in our countdown is the tragic story of Lady Jane Grey, the 9-day queen following the death of Edward II. Jane was the granddaughter of Henry VIII, and at only 17 years old is proclaimed queen in a desperate bid to maintain Protestant rule in England. So, while she wasn't actually technically next in line, Edward, son and successor of Henry VIII, wanted to keep the Protestant line going, so his written will removed his half-sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, from the line on account of their illegitimacy, subverting their claims under the Third Succession Act. Yeah, no, Jane's reign literally lasts 10 days at most. People didn't like the Protestants, and it was very easy for Mary I, the rightful heir, to amass support and overthrow Jane, who I may remind you is not a mastermind seeking power. She is a teenage girl being used as a pawn. Now, to run Mary her credit, she recognized this, and she was lenient by just keeping Jane in the Tower of London. But then it's Jane's father, who's not in prison and going out on the streets protesting Mary like an idiot. He participates in another rebellion against her and uses Jane as a potential figurehead. At that point, Mary's like, I don't know what else I can do. I don't want to kill, but you guys are going to keep rebelling. So her hand is forced to sentence Jane to death and end the rebellions. And speaking of Mary, which we'll be doing a lot, let's get nosy about her mystery heir. It is in 1554, at 38 years old, Bloody Mary, aka Mary I, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, began showing signs of her first pregnancy. Rumors spread through Europe like wildfire as the people awaited Mary's firstborn child. Precautions were mapped out to the nines, since this was the first queen to be on the throne, and women tended to drop like MFing flies due to pregnancy back in the day. Mary's husband Philip lined up to marry Mary's half-sister Elizabeth in the event that Mary died in childbirth, because when you're pregnant and violently ill, nothing says you got this babe, I believe in you honey, more than listening to your husband's emergency plan to bang your sister. In the end, no pregnancy ever comes of Mary's symptoms. One theory is that Mary Mary had actually fallen ill and mistaken her morning sickness for being a pregnancy sickness. Some people believe that Mary was in fact pregnant at one time and tragically lost the child. Notoriously, her mother struggled immensely with infertility, and this may have been a genetic issue. From 1558, Mary had another pregnancy scare, and it unfolded the same way. Only this time we know the sickness she mistook for pregnancy was likely caused by either rupturing cysts or cancer. Her sickness couldn't have come at a worse time, with an epidemic of influenza running rampant through the country, and at 42 years old, Mary I dies heirless. Let's flip sides and check on Mary's sister, their stepmother, and that one creepy uncle. So this involves the future Queen Elizabeth and her step-uncle Thomas Seymour after the death of Henry VIII. Following the execution of her mother Anne Boleyn when Elizabeth was only 3, Elizabeth meets a flurry of brides and wives before it all ends with Catherine Parr, who's married to Henry when he dies in 1547. With Edward appointed king, Catherine soon married Thomas Seymour, the brother of the late Jane Seymour, who was Henry's favorite wife. Stepmother to Elizabeth, Catherine brings the girl to her and Thomas's home, where Elizabeth is subjugated to late night and early morning visits from the horrible man. Something historians believe affected her for the rest of her life, especially since Catherine, knowing what was happening to Elizabeth, did nothing. When she did, it was only to blame Elizabeth for what happened to her and send her away. Ultimately, Elizabeth gets blamed by a lot of people for what happened to her, and in 1548, the same year Elizabeth is sent away and Catherine dies, Thomas decides it's his time to rise to power. In addition to attempts to strengthen his position by winning over naval forces and trying to now convince Elizabeth to be with him, Thomas concocted a master plan to kidnap King Edward. The king! Kidnap! During his attempted kidnapping, Thomas accidentally kills one of Edward's dogs and is quickly captured by the king's guard. In 1549, Thomas was charged by the crown with 33 counts of treason, including conspiring to marry Elizabeth, who was then second in line to the English throne, and killing a royal dog. He met a brutal end at the Tower of London on March 20th of 1549, with the executioner taking 2 blows of an axe to fully sever his head. I hope Elizabeth could smile and feel a little bit of relief when she heard that news. And speaking of Elizabeth and Anne, let's learn about Mary Boleyn's baby bump. By 1534, having failed to bear Henry a son, Anne Boleyn's influence on him is declining. So, she had a good reason to be humiliated when her widowed sister Mary, also the former spank bank of her own husband the king, appeared at court noticeably pregnant. Turns out good old Mary had secretly married William Stafford, a non-reputable man who was simply the son of a wealthier upper-class landowner. Since Stafford was a soldier and the second-born son in his family, trust me, that weirdly made a difference. His prospects and income were small, and many believe the union was actually out of genuine love as a result, which is something that toxic-ass royal family could not comprehend. Not like any of them had had healthy examples of relationships or raised around loving parents. So yeah, when caught repping a gut, Mary confessed that she had secretly and out of necessity married for love Mr. Plain William Stafford, a younger son of a knightly birth with no fortune. Anne was furious, for Stafford was no match for the Queen's sister. Anne has no hesitation in persuading the king to banish the disgraced couple from the court. It's brutal for them financially, and Mary consistently reaches out to Henry and Anne to have some compassion. She admitted that she might have chosen a greater man of birth, but never one that should have loved her so well, nor a more honest man. To quote, "I had rather beg my bread with him than to be the greatest queen in Christendom, and I believe verily he would not forsake me to be a king." It's Anne who relents, sending Mary a magnificent golden cup and a fat stack of cash. This partial reconciliation was the closest the two sisters ever attained, and they never met face to face again. And why didn't they meet face to face again? Only because of the arguably biggest Tudor scandal there is, the fall of Anne Boleyn. This is the year 1536, and the hottest headline has just hit the news cycle. Turns out Queen Anne's royal garden has let some dirty peasants inside to, how can I say this, water her flowers? To be extremely direct, she was accused of adultery with 5 men, and yes, I'm serious, one was her brother. Dude, could you imagine if that allegation happened now? It would be absolutely insane. Now imagine in an era where women had to wear 36 layers of material to not be called a slag and also had 0 rights. It was all too believable. The state papers contained many cases of people damning Anne, as she clearly enjoyed flirting with men in her circle. Most of these men were arrested, and Anne herself was imprisoned in the Tower of London, where she was watched and her every word reported. Her indiscreet talking about her compromising banter with her alleged lovers literally only reinforced the case against her. The 5 men were condemned to death, and she was subjected to a show trial in the Great Hall of the Tower and found guilty of treason. 4 days later, it was death to Anne Boleyn. Meanwhile, happening at pretty much the same time was an illicit liaison. And I mean same time, quite literally. It was the same summer of 1536 when Henry's own niece, Margaret Douglas, was imprisoned in the Tower under sentence of death. Her crime was also to do with having the audacity to act as a woman with autonomy. She entered into a binding pre-contract of marriage with Lord Thomas Howard, which was treason in the eyes of the king, who was convinced that Thomas had been aspiring for the crown. Fortunately, Henry was fond of Margaret, which means their heads didn't have to be relocated, but their love did. He spared the lovers a sentence of death and commuted it to imprisonment in the Tower. Their love poems still survive and are displayed for the world to see their doomed romance, as Thomas tragically died there of fever in 1537, just days after Margaret had been pardoned, and she was still mourning her lost lover for years later. Similar to Margaret, this family member was swooped up and away to the Tower for the crime of love. Dramatic and romantic, we love a fun mix. This is about Catherine Grey's secret pregnancy and how in 1562, her cousin Elizabeth I has Catherine arrested and taken to, you guessed it, Tower of London. Why? She had dared to secretly marry her lover, Edward Seymour. Catherine was the elder of the 2 surviving sisters of Lady Jane Grey. From the moment she came to the throne, Elizabeth made it clear she could not abide the sight of Catherine, probably to do with the fact she was hella sensitive about her own legitimacy issues due to the whole dad killed mom thing. Follow that up with the fact older sis Mary killing Catherine's older sis Jane thing, Elizabeth naturally distrusted any other persons of royal blood to not want to get revenge or her throne, particularly those whose place in the succession had been confirmed by the Act of Parliament, as Catherine's had. In 1560, Catherine married Edward Seymour, the nephew of Jane Seymour, out of love. For a person of royal blood to marry without the monarch's consent was treasonous, and when Elizabeth heard of it, she wasted no time placing Catherine, who was already pregnant, and her new husband in the Tower. Catherine gives birth to a son, and Elizabeth is pissed. She puts orders from now on Catherine and her husband have to be kept strictly apart. Turns out when you aren't a snobby twit, you can make friends with the guards. So February 1563, Catherine gives birth to a second son in the Tower. Hilariously, 2 of their guards, meant to keep them apart, stand as the godfathers at the christening. When Elizabeth found out, her fury knew no bounds. The Spanish ambassador observed that she turned the color of a corpse. She ordered that Catherine and her husband be removed immediately from the Tower and sent to different places of imprisonment. No matter how many times Catherine wrote and begged, Elizabeth never changed her mind. Catherine's health suffered a serious decline, exacerbated by her refusal to eat and serious depression. In January 1568, she died, aged just 27. "In the world to come, I hope to live forever," she told one of her attendants, "for here is nothing but care and misery." Alright, our last dirty dish of drama on the list will debate victim or vixen. Called his rose without a thorn, Catherine Howard, the 5th wife of Henry VIII, has received mostly apathy since her death on the 13th of February 1542. Catherine Howard is a woman in control of her sensuality in a time it is not accepted, and it can be routed back to her youth being raised by the Dowager Duchess Agnes Howard. She was comfortably accepting of letting the girls in her care explore their adult bodies as they got older, as long as they didn't go too far with anyone. This type of openness was rare and allowed Catherine to develop a basis of what she bodily enjoyed, but also that she could experience bodily enjoyment. Catherine lost her virginity out of wedlock and turned down the man who had taken it, Dereham, when he offered marriage. She didn't want to marry her first adult partner. She knew ways to prevent herself from falling pregnant, and given that marriage was all she'd been raised for, was understandably hesitant to tie herself down to the first person when she just discovered the joys of intercourse with none of the responsibility. Like 2 of her predecessors, her ill-fated cousin Anne Boleyn and Henry's beloved 3rd wife Jane Seymour, Catherine caught Henry's attention as a lady-in-waiting to the queen who preceded her, Anne of Cleves. Young and full of life, Catherine enchanted him. Nothing was too good for her, and her family was quick to encourage his affection and brush Catherine's past relationship with Dereham and other men under the carpet. Catherine might have survived the king, or at least survived a little bit longer, if it wasn't for her relationship with Thomas Culpeper. Sure, there's no confirmation speculation they consummated the relationship, similar to her and Henry Mannix, but what about sneaking a man into your room who isn't your fat, ugly husband? Looks good, homegirl. Henry's initial reaction to the accusations was one of fury. He demanded an investigation be carried out and dispel what he believed to be vile rumors, and turns out everybody is stupid. Literally everyone folds, no pressure, and it just admits to everything. Mannix, Dereham, Culpeper, even Catherine breaks down crying and admits she let Dereham enter her magic gardens, but no other man. Doesn't matter to Henry though, and everyone's sentenced to death. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to see more from us, be sure to comment down below what types of things you'd be interested in hearing about. See you next time.